Welcome to COVID Corner. Today we have a special guest in our show, Dr. Bhagawan Koirala. Dr. Koirala needs no introduction. He is a humanist, public figure, and a heart surgeon. He is known to people across the country as a doctor like the God, as his name suggests. Welcome to our show, Dr. Koirala.
Thank you, Shiramaniji. Thank you. Pleasure to be here with you.
As we speak now, where do we stand in terms of severity of the second wave of coronavirus?
We all know this is rapidly growing in our neighboring countries and now in Nepal. As in last wave, we generally follow the trend of what happens in India, and then after several weeks, kind of same pattern comes in here. So the graph is on the rise. The most worrisome point of this phenomenon is that Nepal has one of the highest rate of growth of numbers. If you look at rate of increase in numbers, we are even higher than India. It's worrisome. And we know that there are a lot of young people being infected, a lot of young people being admitted to the hospitals. And also we've seen many deaths in young people. So that's worrisome. So I can tell you, through you, everybody, that it's a real problem and we all need to be very serious about it.
We often talk about safety of general public. We will definitely talk later in this talks also. Okay. While talking about safety of health workers, how safe are the frontline health workers?
Well, good thing about the frontline health workers and other frontliners is that most of them have been doubly vaccinated. Full dose have been given to them, or at least was offered, and most of them took it. So that's good enough protection. Last year, when it first started, the pandemic when first started, we didn't have that and we were very panicky. Everybody was worried, concerned. Now at least there is some sense of confidence and sense of security. And I think it will be protecting, at least for the most strains that we have. We do not know what happens when the new South African or other variants come in, but at least for the most, UK variant or the original ones, this vaccine that we got seems to be effective. At least there will be no severe disease as far as we know from the literature and the communications. So I think the frontline health workers are reasonably protected. Together with the protective equipment, we should be able to function without much of concerns of our own safety and well-being. I think this time around we should be able to go to the people, go to patients without hesitation. And we urge every healthcare worker to be proactive and move on. I'm sure they've done it in the past, but they will do it better this time.
Okay. Are the current measures sufficient, or the government should do some additional initiatives?
Well, there are a few things about mitigation of this, control of this pandemic. I mean, in terms of, in the context of Nepal, everybody knows that. We have to break the cycle of the chain of transmission. For that, you have standard format, SMS, you got to follow that. The extreme measure of which could be, lockdown type of thing, which is so painful as we know from previous experience. So we need to kind of figure out ways to minimize the extreme way of limiting the movement of people and try and leave them have a little bit of an independence of movement, but with strict public health measures followed, which is a kind of difficult thing to do, but that's, I think, is the only viable thing in a long run. That's one. And here, I think you're going to ask me that afterwards anyway, but I'll tell you right in the beginning that the responsibility of our people, myself, yourself, and everybody around, is of utmost importance. The government is not going to come and put a mask on you. They can enforce it, they can penalize you. I think they will do that, and police is doing that now. But what is important is us to be responsible, so that you don't need any enforcer to do that. That would break the cycle to a large extent. And what else needs to be done is the control the borders. somebody who comes from abroad with infections need to be, quarantined, and we need to come up with other facilities, extra facilities for those who don't have, home quarantine situation. That kind of needs to be organized by the government through the local bodies and etc. What also needs to be done is prepare for the worst case scenario, or even the normal case scenario. Now there is so many patients. The hospitals have to be better prepared, better equipped, better manned, so that when the number of cases being admitted increases, we have enough people to treat these patients, we have enough facilities, we have enough beds, enough oxygen supply, and other supplies at hand, which I think is still very worrisome. We're not there yet.
Also, government has been criticized for not taking proactive measures to curb the spread of coronavirus. Do you feel the same?
This pandemic is a disaster everywhere. No country could really handle it perfectly, maybe excepting a couple of countries that have really smartly handled this. But it's a difficult thing to handle anyway. So you can easily criticize the government. You could also give the credit to the government. But I would say this: we could have done better. Our government could have done better in preparing our facilities, preparing the local bodies better, regulated the borders better. I think there are things that we could have done better. We started preparing for new beds in the provinces, started preparing for high dependency units and intensive care in the last wave. Those projects are yet not complete. I think that is where we can demand more from the government and also the subsidiaries of the government, meaning the local bodies, lower level hospitals, autonomous institutions. They are also equally responsible to do this. And turns out the work hasn't been done to the fullest. And now again, we're in the middle of this wave now, and there's not much time for us to prepare. So I think we've missed out on something, but I wouldn't say that they didn't do anything. I mean, that would be wrong. Yeah.
As a health professional, who is responsible for this situation, whether it is government or public, or it is a collective failure?
Well, I mean, let's not call it a failure yet, because it came. The nature of the disease is such that it's going to transmit rapidly, new variants. We were not careful enough. People were not responsible enough to protect themselves, follow the guidelines, trust the science. So that's why it kind of, ravaged across communities. But again, there is a responsibility of the government also in communicating right, talking to people right, taking the stakeholders together. There are a lot of stakeholders here. Ministry of Health alone cannot do things. They have these autonomous institutions who are also supposed to work independently. You can request them, you cannot really order them to do tiny little things inside the institution. So you need to pull the strings there. You have private institutions as stakeholders. There are a lot of patients going there. So you need to talk to them. So you need to be able to bring on board all the stakeholders, local authorities, which seem to do things differently than what the federal government does. So there is a lot of responsibility of kind of coordinating, moderating, bringing them together, sometimes enforcing, but most of the time talking to them and making them work what you want. I think that would be a skillful leadership that we really want to see.
While talking about bringing different stakeholders together, can we say our government failed to take coordinated measures?
Again, the failure would be too much a hard word.
Okay.
I mean, I wouldn't say that. I can see our ministry is going, they've been heated up like anything this time around. Last time we had to push them up very hard. This time I think ministry is very active. But again, as I said before, being active alone doesn't seem to be enough because there are too many other stakeholders. Now you need little extra skills of bringing everybody together on board, making everybody equally active, equally responsible, including the common public. So I think there's a huge gap in communicating to the public, talking to them, generating their trust. What we say, they need to believe and follow. It may be their problem, but it's our job, the government's job, to make them understand what is important, what is scientific, what needs to be done. So I think in this side, taking the stakeholders together and communicating in times of crisis is something which I wish could be better.
Okay. Now talking to lockdown or prohibitory measures, the government is enforcing lockdown from Thursday. Should this decision have been taken, or should this decision have been made much earlier, or is it the right time to enforce lockdown?
This is again another difficult question that nobody can perfectly answer. Okay, it can be too early, it could be too late. From the experience of last year of our own country, we were very aggressive last time. Nepal was very aggressive. Only 2 cases identified and we went on lockdown. The borders closed, and people were sick and tired of seeing this, kind of frozen economy, frozen life. People didn't want to see this. So there would be a lot of resentment if there were very aggressive measures right in the beginning. So I think the government was being a little reluctant on taking very harsh measures this time around. And I think that probably reflected on the spread. But again, I would say rather than a blanket nationwide lockdown, very smart lockdowns here and there, and try and see if you can relax them. More than that, I would think controlling the movements by other measures, I think are more sustainable than a complete lockdown, because lockdowns are not going to eradicate the disease. They're not going to stop completely the cycle of transmission. What lockdown does is suppress the graph, it reduces the rate of spread, it gives us enough time to prepare for the hospitals. Maybe then, hoping that we're going to get more vaccines, more people can get vaccinated, and then we acquire a so-called herd immunity, which then would be a situation where the transmission rate automatically starts going down. So lockdowns are not solutions in themselves. That has to come along with other measures which are more sustainable. And we also need to prepare the institutions, the hospitals, for the sick patients that can come in. So I think it is a composite decision. I would still say that you need to do smart measures rather than a blanket lockdowns.
So in terms of breaking the infection chain, the vicious circle of infection chain that is going on now, will lockdown be effective measure on that?
It is effective. It is effective, as shown in previous waves and previous epidemics, pandemics. It is definitely effective, but it is a very expensive, very painful measure. It's an extreme measure of social distancing. You force people to stay home so that nobody comes across each other. Okay, so that's just too much to sustain for a long time. So we need to again think of ways, how do we relax that? How do we control people's movement without compromising the livelihood of most of these people? Because once you stop movement, people cannot work. There will be no, subsistence for them. So it will be very painful, and there will be a lot of resentment after that. So we need to keep thinking, what next? What next? Right after you stop people's movement, public transport frozen, individual movements restricted, then when do we relax and how? What other measures come together? So those things need to be sorted out right now, thought through right now.
What can be measures other than lockdown?
No, public health measures are very straightforward. You need to force people to wear mask. Unless you are, 6 feet apart from in open space. You need to,
like we are now.
Yeah, right. You need to, educate people on, hand hygiene. You need to, so SMS, as we always say, social distancing, mask, and sanitation. Those are the standard, very proven techniques. But also we need to educate people that this time around the variants are worse in terms of virulence, the transmissibility, and even the severity of the disease. So I think we need to be very careful. And this is a season for all sorts of, marriages, weddings, and, stuff like that. People need to understand that this is not time to enjoy having fun in public. This is not the time. We need to be a little responsible. And, if we all remain healthy, we can celebrate a few months down the line.
Okay. We went through the experience of first wave 1 year back, and now we are experiencing the second wave. What can we learn from the experience of first wave?
I think, as I said before, I think we learned a lot of lessons about how to handle this, extreme measures of social distancing, like the lockdowns. We have some solid, painful lessons from that time. We learned that even if that was painful, but quarantining those who are coming from abroad is very important, because I think that was very important last time around to contain the spread of infection. And educating people matters. This time I see very little media campaign, centrally and peripherally. Last time there was a lot of campaign. That worked. I think we're late in doing that this time around. So I think some lessons from last time which are positive, as I said, which are negative, and some are negative. I think we need to kind of correct ourselves and move in the right direction. So we got to be very aggressive in media campaign, educating people. We got to be very judicious on lockdowns, restricting movements forcefully for a long time. We need to regulate the borders. We need to regulate border. We need to facilitate movement of our people back and forth, but that needs to be controlled, regulated, so that we have exact account of what's happening, who is coming and how. And I think that would be important in the long run also, not just this time around.
We are coming to end of our talk show. So at the end of the show, do you have any particular message to our audience?
Well, I only have one request, for my own family, yourself and your family. Let us be responsible. Let us not rush to enjoy or celebrate any, festival or the weddings or any activity that you may have at home. Let us survive through first, and we'll have enough time to enjoy rest of our lives afterwards. And just beg to you that, protect your seniors, give extra space in the house for seniors and those who have chronic conditions. And we all need to work together with the government, the community and civic society, so that we can all help each other. And one last word, my mask is protecting you more than myself, and your mask is going to protect me more than yourself.
Thank you, Dr. Koirala. With this, we conclude the show. We will come up with new episode soon. Till then, stay safe, take care.